Up, come on. Right there. Oh my God. Oh, chief.
We are talking the low-budget horror B-movie Crocodylus. This one is directed and written by Miles Earthworth, and this is a kind of killer crocodile movie, but done on a shoestring budget. The plot is very similar, at least initially, to the movie Jaws, a film that they actually reference within this movie itself. So we have this area in Florida where there have been a couple of quite vicious, seemingly alligator attacks, although these gators seem to be something a little different with the bite marks and left behind tooth that they have found, for example. There seems to be some type of irregularities with this alligator. Maybe it's particularly large, maybe it's some type of crossbreed between a gator and a crocodile, or maybe it's something else completely different. It focuses on mainly our kind of a town sheriff with the help of the kind of local paleontologist types to try and figure out what's going on and ultimately discover the secret of this strange creature that seems to be hunting this local populace. So what do we think about Crocodylus? So like I've mentioned, a very low budget movie, and watching this movie that's very apparent. And I was curious how they were going to handle a creature feature which relies heavily on special effects, i.e. the alligator stroke crocodile itself. And they have found an interesting workaround. Now they do use a little bit of stock footage, but that's not the main creature. That's just kind of giving you glimpses of maybe what the kind of gators and crocs will actually do. So, what works first of all? Okay, I feel this movie is fairly ambitious, and I do applaud the attempt here for a big swing. Because the movie does have a very kind of fairly large plot that encompasses lots of kind of locations, you know, relatively kind of like big cast. And it does follow the same template set out by Jaws. We have, you know, obviously the police chief here, who seems to be the one to be driving the investigation. Of course, the mayor wants to kind of open the town for, you know, tourists and stuff like that. Very much like the kind of the movie Jaws, and he seems to be particularly kind of unwilling to kind of be helpful. A variety of kind of different victims, etc., and we have our kind of specialists that are brought in as well. The creature itself is relatively unseen, very much again like the movie Jaws, and this is one of the kind of the workarounds that the movie has. Although the movie does attempt here to have a little bit of a kind of a twist, really, in regards to what the actual creature is. And one very confusing scene, you'll see the creature stalking through some hallways and thinking, what the hell is going on here? How has this creature got into a building complex? All will be explained. So what else can I say that works? Okay, the creature itself, when it's revealed, I've got to say, it's interesting and kind of fun in a very cheesy B-movie, you know, wink at the audience way. The movie isn't really played campily, to be honest with you. It is played relatively straight, but you can't help but feel this is like a sort of super silly, cheesy B-movie, really, that you can kind of have a little bit of a laugh at. Some of the characters I feel are quite colourful. And I've got the feeling that they obviously are not professional actors, and they're more or less just acting how they probably really act in real life. And some of them actually come across, for example, there's like a belligerent drunk father whose son has gone missing, and I thought he actually did a pretty good job, to be honest with you, although he's not in many scenes. I like the kind of the relationship between the sheriff and his wife, for example. But maybe what doesn't work here? Okay, again, this is mainly going to be down to kind of like budgetary restraints. On a technical level, I feel there is some severe shortcomings in regards to editing. For example, we'll have shots that transition from one into another that seemingly don't make any rational space. For example, there is a scene in the movie where we have someone who is in the bank and someone who is in the water. I won't say who it is, but then the person on the bank sees the kind of like the reeds ruffle over in the kind of like in the distance. Literally the next shot is the person in the water getting dragged under the water. There's no transition from this thing going from the reeds into the water. It literally happens in the next shot. There's no transition in time. And then the shot after that is the body dumped seemingly somewhere else. So there's some very kind of poor edits here in regards to how the kind of the narrative flows, but also just some sort of quick and ugly edits as well that seemingly just are a little bit abrasive. The camera work also leaves a lot to be desired, having a lot of shots way too kind of close up and things like that, and things like shaking the camera around to try and make it atmosphere again seems kind of cheap, more cheap than it kind of needed to be, so to speak. The acting, for the most part, as you probably expect for a low budget kind of relatively amateur production, is probably not the best, but I don't suspect these people are, or at least the majority of them are actually actors themselves. The plot itself is particularly kind of hammy. It starts off relatively strong, I will say, very much in the template of Jaws. More or less kind of following that kind of the same plot, and then it kind of veers off into much more of a cheesy sci-fi territory with a kind of cackling villain really who is pretty over the top, I must say. There seems to be a lot of peripheral characters here that don't really need to be there, especially in regards to this team of doctors and kind of people, kind of researchers and things like that. There seems to be like two characters who seem to be completely superfluous to the plot, if I'm completely honest. This is not a particularly gory movie, and a lot of the actual attack scenes are shot in a way where you don't really see anything. You just see like splashes and kind of blood in the water and stuff like that. You never really see a kill per se. It's just people kind of getting dragged under the water. You get maybe a close-up a couple of times of some jaws, but that's really it. When our creature is revealed, I've got to say, it's kind of fun, but it's very silly. There's also some big plot gaps here, and just some very sort of like obvious continuity issues here as well. Again, I don't want to kind of point things out necessarily, but there's just a lot of plot holes and a lot of continuity errors, which points to the movie being shot on a very kind of like quick basis and not a lot of kind of reshoots and stuff like that to be done. Not a lot of takes, things like that, and maybe just shot over the course of a week or so, I suspect. Overall, I've got to say, I did think I was impressed at least with the movie's ambition to try and do a fairly kind of sprawling kind of creature feature that is reminiscent of the movie's kind of like Jaws, but also somewhat of the kind of like the B movies of the 50s in a certain way, where we have like a man-made monster kind of thing who's a hybrid of one thing and another. And it does remind the creature is revealed, although it's fairly fleeting, to be fair. The movie will remind you of those kind of maybe these sort of 50s kind of sci-fi movies to a certain degree. Again, I'm not going to spoil what the actual creature turns out to be, but it may not be what you think. And there's some vast inconsistencies of what the movie is showing us compared to what we actually get. So overall, I can't really recommend this one as a, quote-unquote good movie. It does have some entertainment value. I will say I was kind of interested. I wasn't kind of too switching out, if that makes sense, because I was kind of going along for the ride. But objectively, I wouldn't say it's a particularly good film, but it nonetheless has some entertainment value. As such, I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.